I knew that I wanted to have an antique shop here. And when I moved in, I felt like this is what I wanted to do. But I never knew where. And one evening, it just literally was downloaded to me. It just came into me, and I said, oh my God, I know exactly what to do. Well, I knew that I wanted to move to a farm, and I had to wait 9 years to get here. And I happened to be driving by to go to Farm and Fleet one day, and I saw a for sale sign down at the lane. And when I drove by, I had never driven up here before, but I knew that this was the spot. I knew it. And I went home and I told my husband, we have to pursue this. This is the place. I went to the chicken coop, which is the little milking house, and took all the chickens out and borrowed $200 from my parents for paint. And I went down to an auction for flooring and laid the floor, painted the walls. My husband built shelves along the north wall, and that was all I had. I just had a few things on the shelves. It took a few years for people to start coming because I couldn't advertise. I literally had no money to start this. And so I had a little wooden sign down at the end of the lane with an arrow that said antiques pointing up the lane. And that was it. That was all I could do for advertising. And like I said, a few years later, people started coming, and I started to go to a flea market and garage sales and buy antiques that I started to know about. I was teaching myself during that whole thing. A few years later, I think it was about 2.5 years later, I decided I could move into the main building, which we call the main building now. And again, it was just a metal shed. We expanded into that, and then a couple years later, we cut a hole in the wall and made the next building that's connected to it, which was my chicken coop then, an extension of that building. So we had a 25 by 20 and another 25 by 20 all connected at that point. So that hung for another few years, I believe, and then I kept expanding, and we went into the big barn then. And it's an 1839 barn, and it's built with the big wooden pegs. So there's no nails. It's like the Amish build it, and that's why it's still standing. It's so strong. So then we expanded more, and it just kept evolving. And my husband built a finished room in the barn. So he drywalled it and put some windows in and some beautiful French doors. And that's where we have all our fancy furniture, our Victorian glassware, stuff like that. And then we put a staircase that used to be to an old restaurant, I believe, one of those big heavy staircases going up to the loft. And then I opened up the loft too. So the whole big barn was taken. And then later on, a couple years later, we decided to move to the other building, which is this building. We call it the Cottage. And for a long time, for years, it had Victorian furniture in here, and it was all set up very fancy. My mom died in 2010, and when I came home from her funeral in Arizona, when I woke up the next morning, I knew that I was to clear this out and make it something different. I've been on my spiritual path since 2000, after a car accident in 1999, and I realized that it was time to open a space for others to come and learn and join in as a community on a spiritual level. We took all the Victorian furniture out, we put it in the barn, and made this into, it was called the Cottage, the Tranquility Cottage. And it offers tea and coffee and sweets to anybody who wants to come in and read books and just be part of a very tranquil setting. Even that, it has evolved farther and farther through the years. In 2012, in January, I started writing a book, and it's called One Soul's Journey, A Mystic's Way Home. And it was published last fall, so it was published immediately. Because I live in the moment, I really don't go to the future. It's totally up to the divine flow. I'm just doing the legwork.